Guys, today I am going to tell you the most ridiculous military story in history. Have you ever heard of negative casualties? Like you deploy 80 soldiers and come back with 81. Not only did nobody die, but you actually gained a friend. This isn't some internet meme. This actually happened in 1866. The tiny country of Liechtenstein sent 80 soldiers to fight in the Austro-Prussian War, and these guys literally didn't fight anyone. Instead, they spent their time drinking wine, sightseeing, and casually befriended some random Austrian dude who thought they were cool enough to follow home. This is the legendary Zen Army went out to war, came back from a team-building retreat. Welcome to today's wacky history first. Let's talk about Liechtenstein. How small is this place? 62 square miles total. That is smaller than Washington, D.C. The population in 1866 was about 7,000 people. Basically the size of a small American town. Imagine if your local homeowners association suddenly decided to join World War I/II. In 1866, Europe exploded into the Austro-Prussian War. Prussia and Austria were basically having a cage match to see who got to be the boss of German-speaking Europe. As a member of the German Confederation, Liechtenstein was technically supposed to back Austria. But here is the thing. What exactly was Liechtenstein's army? The entire military consisted of 80 soldiers total, and that included a few drummers and one medic. Their equipment was basically some old rifles and a couple of small cannons. This looked more like a neighborhood watch than an actual military force. Prince Johann II of Liechtenstein faced an awkward choice: either break the alliance and not participate and get roasted by other German states, or send these 80 guys into a major European war, which was basically a death sentence. Finally, the prince made a brilliant decision: deploy all 80 soldiers, but give them the mission to guard the border. In modern terms, go show your faces, but don't actually try to die for this. These 80 soldiers were commanded by Captain Peter Zolli von Faltz. This guy basically got orders that translated to take the boys on a field trip, safety first. Coming home alive is the top priority. In June 1866, Liechtenstein's 80-man expeditionary force set off. The entire nation of 7,000 people came out to see them off. After all, this was like 1% of the entire population going to war. Their destination was the Tyrol region in northern Italy, which was Austria's front line. According to the plan, they were supposed to help Austrian forces defend this area against possible Prussian or Italian attacks. But when these 80 Liechtenstein soldiers arrived at their destination, they discovered an awkward truth. There were literally no enemies. The Prussian army was up north fighting Austria's main forces. The Italian army was down south being held off by other Austrian units, and the Tyrol region was basically a forgotten corner. The place had beautiful scenery, great weather, friendly locals. It was basically a vacation destination. Captain von Faltz looked around and made one of the wisest military decisions in history. Well, since there are no enemies, I guess we'll just wait here. So these 80 Liechtenstein soldiers began their war life. Wake up every morning, check if there are any enemies, spoiler, there weren't. Then start enjoying the alpine scenery. They became buddies with the local Austrian garrison, drinking and chatting together, sharing their respective cultures. The Liechtenstein soldiers discovered that the Austrians were super curious about their tiny country, constantly asking questions like, does your country really only have 80 soldiers? As time went on, these 80 Liechtenstein soldiers basically turned their military operation into a corporate retreat. They went hiking in the Alps, sampled local wine and cheese, learned German and Italian, and some even started keeping diaries of their war experience. The local Austrian officers had a great impression of these soldiers from the tiny country. The Liechtenstein guys were well disciplined, didn't cause trouble, and were always super polite. More importantly, they brought some Liechtenstein specialties, including quality cheese and handcrafted goods. In this relaxed and pleasant atmosphere, an unexpected friendship began to bloom. There was this Austrian soldier. Some historians think he might have been an Italian deserter, but this detail isn't clear in the historical records. Let's call him Hans, who became really interested in these Liechtenstein guys. Hans might have been a war-weary dude, or maybe he just thought Liechtenstein sounded like a nice place to live. He started hanging out with the Liechtenstein soldiers, learning their language, understanding their culture, and even helping them with daily tasks. When Captain von Faltz noticed this situation, he didn't treat Hans as a spy or enemy, but as a friend. After all, on this battlefield with no enemies, having one more friend was definitely better than having one more enemy. Hans gradually became an unofficial member of this 80-person group. He ate with everyone, went on patrols together though there wasn't much to patrol, and enjoyed the alpine scenery with the crew. In July 1866, the Austro-Prussian War ended with Prussia's victory. Austria was defeated, the German Confederation was dissolved, and all the small states had to reconsider their political positions. For Liechtenstein's 80 soldiers, this news was both good and bad. Good news, the war was over and they could go home. Bad news, their vacation was ending. Captain von Faltz received orders to return home. He started organizing the soldiers to pack up and prepare to return to Liechtenstein. At this point, Hans faced a choice: stay here and continue his original life, or follow these new friends to check out the legendary Liechtenstein. After some consideration, Hans made a life-changing decision. He wanted to go back with the Liechtenstein army. Captain von Faltz welcomed this. In his view, Hans was already part of their team, plus bringing back a foreign friend could be considered a war trophy from this military operation. The other soldiers were also happy. Over the past few months, Hans had become their good friend, and everyone was reluctant to say goodbye. So in August 1866, Liechtenstein's expeditionary force began their journey home. They left with 80 people and returned with 81. When these 81 people returned to Liechtenstein, the entire nation was shocked. Not because they brought back a foreign friend, but because they all came back alive, and there was actually one extra person. In that era, military operations usually meant casualties. Even the most successful battles would have soldiers die or get wounded, but Liechtenstein's military operation achieved 0 casualties, actually negative casualties. Prince Johann II was extremely satisfied with this result. Although Liechtenstein didn't play any real role in the war, at least they fulfilled their alliance obligations without losing any personnel. More importantly, this operation proved Liechtenstein's diplomatic wisdom, staying low-key in great power games, avoiding unnecessary conflicts while maintaining national dignity. Hans settled down in Liechtenstein and became a new resident of this small country. He learned the Liechtenstein dialect, integrated into the local community, and probably got married and had kids, becoming part of Liechtenstein's history. Captain von Faltz was commended for this successful military operation. Although they didn't participate in any battles, they completed their mission, protected Liechtenstein's interests, maintained national honor, and everyone came home safely. Liechtenstein's military operation was unique in military history. This was the only recorded negative casualty military operation. Not only were there no personnel losses, but they actually gained personnel. This event demonstrated the survival wisdom of small countries in great power games. Liechtenstein didn't try to play a decisive role in the Austro-Prussian War, which was obviously impossible, but chose a strategy that both fulfilled obligations and protected themselves. From a modern military theory perspective, Liechtenstein's strategy was completely correct. They avoided unnecessary losses, maintained military integrity, while preserving international relations. This operation also showed the human side of war. Even in military conflicts, soldiers from different countries could still build friendships. Hans's choice to follow the Liechtenstein army home showed that personal relationships sometimes matter more than national boundaries. Liechtenstein's military operation embodied a unique military philosophy. Sometimes not fighting is wiser than fighting. In a world full of conflict, Liechtenstein chose peace. They didn't try to prove their military strength, but focused on protecting their people and culture. This Zen military strategy still has relevance in modern international relations. Small countries don't need to prove their existence through military adventures, but can maintain their interests through diplomatic wisdom and cultural soft power. Liechtenstein's 80 soldiers might not have achieved battlefield glory, but they proved an important truth: sometimes the greatest victory is avoiding defeat. From today's perspective, Liechtenstein's military operation almost seems like a heartwarming fairy tale. In an era full of violence and conflict, this small country chose a different path. Liechtenstein's experience showed the unique advantages small countries have in international politics. Great powers need to consider face, prestige, and geopolitical influence, while small countries can be more flexible and pragmatic. Liechtenstein didn't try to play an important role in the Austro-Prussian War, but chose a strategy that neither offended any side nor compromised their own interests. This wisdom still applies in today's international relation. Modern Liechtenstein continues this pragmatic foreign policy. The country has no standing army, focuses on economic development and cultural construction, and has become one of Europe's wealthiest and most stable countries. In a sense, that 1866 military operation laid the foundation for Liechtenstein's modern foreign policy. Avoid conflict, seek cooperation, solve problems with wisdom rather than force. The most touching part of this story might be Hans's choice. A complete stranger moved by the kindness of the Liechtenstein people decided to abandon his original life and follow them to a completely unfamiliar country. This shows that human connections are sometimes stronger than countries and politics. In that era of rising nationalism, Hans's choice was particularly precious. We don't know much about Hans's subsequent life in Liechtenstein, but we can imagine he found a sense of belonging in this small country after all. An army willing to accept foreign friends must have a tolerant and friendly society behind it. This story also reminds us that the most precious thing in war isn't victory or defeat, but the brilliance of humanity. Even in the most tense military confrontations, people can still choose friendship over hatred. Liechtenstein's negative casualty military operation tells us that sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing when not to fight. In a world that worships force and competition, this small country chose a different path and achieved the best results. These 80 soldiers might not have achieved battlefield glory, but they created the most heartwarming legend in military history. They proved that even in war, human kindness and the power of friendship can still shine bright. Hans, the mysterious friend who chose to follow the Liechtenstein army home, might be the most important character in this story. His choice symbolizes human emotions that transcend borders, reminding us never to forget the basic goodwill between people. Next time you face conflict and confrontation, remember Liechtenstein's story. Sometimes the best victory isn't defeating enemies, but turning enemies into friends. Sometimes the most successful military operation isn't eliminating opponents, but safely bringing everyone home, and maybe even bringing an extra friend. This is Liechtenstein's legend, history's most zen army conquering the battlefield with friendship, winning history with kindness. If you think this story about negative casualty military operations is heartwarming enough, then give it a like. Follow Wacky History to discover more real but incredible historical miracles, because sometimes the best stories are those real events that warm your heart.